what's up? Hello, everyone. It's the most wonderful time of the year. The TIFF schedule has been released. And because the lineup is so massive, it can be really easy to get lost and not know exactly what you want to see. Sure, there's the big movies that everyone knows about. There's the Wake Up Dead Man, there's the Frankenstein, there's all of those films. But there's so many other gems in the lineup. So my goal today is to give you a comprehensive breakdown of everything that I'm looking at the festival, and I'll be explaining why I'm excited for these films, hopefully getting you a little bit excited too. Before we begin, if you are attending the festival this year for the very first time, I highly recommend taking a look at my video from last year. It gives an idea of how the festival works. The link to that video is in the description down below. Again, if it's your first time visiting TIFF, you're gonna have a blast, but watch that video to prepare. And unfortunately, I've got festival FOMO making this video this year because this is the very first time since 2012 that I will not be attending TIFF. I'm going to be moving to New York City, which is very exciting, but it also leaves me very sad that I will not be able to go and see all of these TIFF movies that I talk about in this video. And just the same way that I did in my Cannes lineup videos this year, I will only be talking about the films that interest me here. I know that there's going to be some films that are excellent that I don't end up talking about because they don't catch my eye right now. But if there's something that I don't mention that you're excited about, leave it in the comments down below. Now, getting right into it, here are the films that I'm most interested in from the Gala lineup. The Gala lineup is billed as featuring the glitziest premieres from around the world, but the only thing in reality that separates the galas from the special presentations is that every gala first premieres at Roy Thompson Hall, which I believe is the worst theater possibly in the entire world to see a movie in. These gala movies can be very hit or miss. Often the gala lineup delivers a few of the best of the festival, as well as 5 or 6 of the very worst. So this can be a complete minefield figuring out which ones are which. What are the good ones? What are the bad ones? But I'm going to give it a shot, and I'm going to tell you what I'm most excited for. But I've already seen one of these films, and I would highly recommend Peak Everything, which plays as the closing film of the festival. It's a Canadian film directed by Anne Aymond. It tells the story of a man who has severe climate anxiety, who falls in love with a woman on the other end of a customer support line of his new therapeutic light. It's a very funny movie with lots of cute dogs. It's primarily set in a dog kennel. The tone of the movie reminds me a lot of Spike Jonze and Charlie Kaufman's collaborations, as well as the film Seeking a Friend for the End of the World or Lost in Translation. It's a really fun movie. Definitely recommend checking it out. And now into the films that I haven't seen from this year's gala lineup. My number one most anticipated, possibly of the entire festival, is No Other Choice. This is the new Park Chan-wook film. It is a dark satire with some elements of horror, kind of in the same vein of American Psycho. In No Other Choice, a recently laid-off worker becomes a serial killer while on the hunt for a new job, because in a very competitive field, the best way he finds to secure his employment is to murder all of the similarly qualified people who live in his area. The book that this is based on, which is titled The Axe, has previously been adapted into a film by French director Costa Gavras. Park Chan-wook, whose previous films include some of the greatest Korean films of all time, including Old Boy, The Handmaiden, Decision to Leave. He was originally planning to make this as an English language film and co-wrote it with frequent Cronenberg collaborator, hometown TIFF boy Don McKellar. But then he decided that the story actually fit better in South Korea, and he rewrote it. But everything about this movie is exciting me. It's got a great premise, it's got a director on a hot streak, and lots of promising indicators around it. Great trailer. I think that this could be an absolute sensation. Watch out for No Other Choice, the best film, I think. It's going to be the best film in the gala lineup this year. Hamnet Chloe Zhao's new film has been one of the expected major awards contenders this year, and though that buzz has been dying out just a little bit, I'm still extremely excited for this film, especially to see how Chloe Zhao approaches a historical drama. She's done amazing work in her social realist dramas like Nomadland or The Rider or Songs Our Brothers Taught Us. She's done less amazing work in her one foray into superhero movies, but here she is adapting a best-selling novel about William Shakespeare's wife, Agnes, and the grief that she experiences after the loss of her child. I'm really intrigued to see what a Chloe Zhao film of this story will look like. Even The Eternals, it still kept a lot of her signature style despite being a superhero movie in its DNA. It was still a Chloe Zhao movie. I'm also really excited to see Jessie Buckley in the main role here, as she is, I believe, one of the great actors that we have working today. And additionally, Lucas Zhao, the cinematographer of Cold War, Ida, and The Zone of Interest, is the cinematographer of this film, which means that it should look spectacular. So regardless of whether this is this year's Blitz or not, I'm all in on being excited to see it. Eternity. A24 just recently released a trailer for this one, and what can I say? I'm sold on the premise of it. It's a mix of Hirokazu Koreeda's Afterlife and Powell and Pressburger's A Matter of Life and Death. Eternity is about the week after a husband and wife both pass away in their old age, finding themselves young again and presented with the question, who would you like to spend the rest of eternity with? And for the husband, the answer is simple, but for the wife, who was left a widow in her youth when her first husband died at war, the question is a lot more complicated. I'm a sentimental guy. I love a sentimental movie, and this looks like it's going to make me weep. Sue me. Okay, sue me. The trailer has great production design. The summary intrigues me immediately. This is probably this year's We Live in Time, which is a romance that I adore way more than everyone else because I'm a sap, but like I said, sue me, okay? Palestine 36. Anne-Marie Jaser's new film tells the story of the Palestinian people's revolt against British rule in 1936. And while very little else has been released in terms of details, not even a runtime, from the sounds of it, this reminds me of historical epics like Gandhi or Lawrence of Arabia, which were both well over 3 hours long. And Palestine 36 feels like it would be fitting to have that type of runtime, to give it room to be the epic that it deserves to be, rather than just a crash course history lesson on how Palestine was colonized and abused by the British, and how that legacy directly results in what we're seeing today. I hope that this one goes as big as it sounds like it should. A Private Life. I missed my screening of this one at Cannes, and although I have a handful of friends who said that it was mediocre and that I really didn't miss out on anything, I still want to see it, mainly for Jodie Foster's performance, which even my underwhelmed friends said was very strong. The film is about a therapist who begins to play detective when one of her clients dies. But again, it's all about Jodie Foster for me, and her winning one of the TIFF tribute prizes backs that up, that she is going to be phenomenal in this. Also, she's speaking French the entire movie. All French, which is fascinating. I can't wait to see her work in this movie. Homebound. This is an Indian film that previously played at Cannes in the Un Certain Regard program to solid reviews. It's yet another Cannes film that I had a ticket to and had to cancel. This film follows two men from a small village in the north of India who go into policing and are pulled in sort of separate directions. The director of this film, Neeraj Gaiwan, previously made the feature film Masan, which I've heard amazing things about, and he was also the assistant and right-hand man to the director on Gangs of Wasseypur, which is one of my favorite Hindi movies ever made. Homebound doesn't have as strong reviews as either of those previously mentioned movies, but it still sounds like it's absolutely worth a watch. Roofman. Derek Cianfrance is back after a many-year break, but we can't forget this is the guy that made Blue Valentine. This is the guy that made The Place Beyond the Pines. Roofman sounds like a stranger-than-fiction type of crime story that might suit a magazine article better than it suits a film, as it follows a real-life criminal who used a Toys R Us as their hideout while stealing money from various McDonald's locations by sneaking in through the roof. This type of story kind of makes you go, huh, interesting. but it doesn't really have much more to that. I'm going to be interested to see, does Sign France find something deeper below the surface, or something that warrants this being a big budget Hollywood movie instead of like a 3-part Netflix miniseries? Good Fortune. This is Aziz Ansari's new film, which is a sort of fantasy comedy about an angel who intervenes as a guardian in the lives of 2 men, getting them into a sort of Trading Places-esque situation. While I didn't love the trailer of this one, I have to give Aziz Ansari some grace. He did make Master of None, which is one of my favorite TV shows of recent memory, and that gives him a ticket to me being excited for his next few projects, no matter what. I think he is a very strong writer. My hope is that this film is a little bit deeper than what meets the eye. Eleanor the Great. Scarlett Johansson's directorial debut was one that I could not get tickets for at Cannes, but I heard that it wasn't amazing anyways, but still, you know, I would do anything for June Squibb, so I want to see it even though I know it likely won't blow me away. This has a bit of a baffling storyline to it, being described as Dear Evan Hansen for the Holocaust, as June Squibb plays a woman in her 90s who lies about being a Holocaust survivor to make new friends when she moves to New York City. That's a crazy premise. I don't know how they're going to make it not wildly offensive. And if nothing else, it sounds like it's worth seeing just to see how they managed to pull this off, or not pull it off, because what the fuck? The Coral. Ralph Fiennes is back at TIFF after last year's Conclave, this year in Nicholas Hittner's The Coral. Hittner is a revered theater director working in the West End primarily, but he has directed a handful of acclaimed films like The Madness of King George, The Crucible, and The History Boys. His most recent film was The Lady in the Van in 2015, which wasn't really the type of film that I find exciting. As the British would say, not my cup of tea. Really falls into a specific category of British films that kind of feels stuffy and dull, and The Coral could be that too, as it tells the story of a teenage choir performing in England during the First World War. I really hope that Hittner can find the magic that he found back in the 90s with The Madness of King George, or at the very least, he can get a great Ralph Fiennes performance, and that's enough for me. Fuse. This is the new film from David Mackenzie, who was at the fest last year with Relay. Mackenzie is a director who I think is entirely dependent on the strength of the script that he's working with. He can do Hell or High Water, but most of the films that he makes are much closer to Relay. They're well-crafted films that don't really linger with you long after the credits. Fuse seems more like that to me, but the premise indicates that it could just be a really fun time. It's a story about an unexploded bomb from World War II discovered in London, forcing an entire city block to evacuate as the bomb squad deals with it. And this evacuation becomes the cover for an elaborate heist by a group of opportunistic criminals. I love the idea of a panic around an unexploded bomb. The heist edition of it, I'm a little bit less convinced by, but regardless, this seems like it could be an incredibly fun thriller, even if it does end up being kind of forgettable. Two Pianos. Arnaud Desplechin can be hit or miss, so it's always a bit of a gamble checking out his newest, which tells the story of a pianist who returns to his hometown after a long time spent abroad. And when he returns home, he sees a child in public that looks exactly like him, leading him back to rekindle a romance with an old love. The story isn't giving me a ton, but I'm willing to give Desplechin a chance. Next up is the Special Presentations program, which is practically indistinguishable from galas in that it also promises big glitzy premieres from around the world. The only real difference between the two programs is that these premieres take place in the Princess of Wales Theatre, the Royal Alexandra Theatre, and TIFF Lightbox's biggest two theaters. I have seen 12 of the Special Presentations selections so far, many of which I have highlighted in my Cannes videos. Notably, Sentimental Value and Sound of Falling are two of my favorite films of the decade so far. I also think that Surat is going to knock everyone's socks off. Just be prepared to be a little bit depressed afterwards. Nouvelle Vague and A Poet are both hilarious and a lot of fun in a big crowd. But starting with the films I haven't seen, Frankenstein. You know I gotta go out for my main man, Guillermo del Toro. Like almost every one of his films recently, this has been a del Toro passion project for like 20 years now. He's always wanted to make his own version of Frankenstein, inspired by the Frank Darabont screenplay. Darabont, who made The Shawshank Redemption, The Walking Dead, The Green Mile, he wrote an adaptation of Frankenstein in the 90s, which was then made into Kenneth Branagh's film Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which was a critical failure, but many people, including del Toro, insist that Darabont's script was a perfect adaptation, and Branagh's direction, as well as a healthy dose of studio interference, ruined the script in its translation to the screen. Darabont disowned Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but his script lives on, and apparently it serves as a basis for what del Toro is doing in his adaptation. And what else can I say about del Toro's Frankenstein? The trailers, the stills, all of it looks like a visual feast, from the cinematography to the costume design. It just looks magnificent. This is sure to be, if nothing else, one of the most stunning renderings of Gothic horror ever filmed. But beyond that, we're going to get an amazing performance of the monster coming from Jacob Elordi, who's going to be doing a lot more than what people think of as Frankenstein's monster, which is just the grunting and groaning. This is genuinely, I think, one of the most exciting studio films coming this year. Wake Up, Dead Man. I saw Knives Out at TIFF. I saw Glass Onion at TIFF. Unfortunately, I will not be seeing Wake Up Dead Man this year at TIFF. But these movies rule, and Rian Johnson is 2 for 2 so far in his Agatha Christie tribute series, in which Daniel Craig's Benoit Blanc solves cases that reflect a contemporary America and its wealth gaps. Not much is known about the case at hand in this film, but it seems like from the little promotional material we have of it, that it goes into American faith and Southern Christianity, just from the very Baptist iconography in the marketing so far. So if Knives Out tackled old money through an inherited fortune, and Glass Onion tackled new money through a tech billionaire, it seems logical for me to believe that the third movie will go after the rich in a similar way. Perhaps like a televangelist billionaire or the owner of a mega church in a small town in the South. But I'm excited. Rian Johnson is the best person right now at putting together an entertaining roller coaster ride. Rental Family. If I were a betting man, I would be putting money on this as our People's Choice Award winner. Hikari, the director of this film, previously made the very charming 37 Seconds, and she directed this coming from Searchlight, and it's about an American actor who does Japanese commercials in Tokyo, and he gets a new job as a surrogate family member hired by Japanese people to fill whatever role they need in life, whether it's a wedding date, a friend to lean on, or a father. Brendan Fraser leads this one, and the buzz has just been off the charts. Test screenings have been going insane about this, and with the trailer recently released, it seems like it could be the crowd pleaser of the year, and as a world premiere, being that crowd pleaser, being heavily marketed. Can't miss it. It's going to be the People's Choice Award. Mark my words. The Voice of Hind Rajab. Going from the most crowd-pleasy film of the festival to possibly the hardest watch at the entire festival, this is the new project by Four Daughters director Kauter Benhania, who is bringing her blend of documentary and performance to this new film, which is a real-time thriller about the killing of Hind Rajab. And for those who don't know, Hind Rajab was a Palestinian child who was murdered by Israeli armed forces. She was trapped in a car for 90 minutes as IDF forces shot at it 300 times. And the entire time, as she was trapped in the car, she was on the phone. Benhania's new film blends the recording of the real phone call using the actual voice of the little girl, as we see actors portraying the other end of the phone call. The violence against Hind is off-screen, but it is very real the entire time, and we will be hearing the actual tapes. Kauter Benhania is, I think, a new master in my mind. She is the greatest filmmaker working in the Middle East and North Africa at the moment. Both Four Daughters and her film Beauty and the Dogs proved that she is a filmmaker with immense vision and a command over form. She makes big movies with big messages, and The Voice of Hind Rajab is undoubtedly going to be one of the most vital and powerful movies of the year. And it's also worth noting for anyone skeptical of whether this movie is going to be exploitative or whether it's taking advantage of a really terrible situation and using the actual voice of the little girl to kind of capitalize on tragedy. This movie was made in collaboration with and under the guidance of Hin's family, who are entirely in support of the film and the way that it immortalizes their little girl's voice and her story. The Smashing Machine. Benny Safdie is one half of the Safdie brothers, and this is the first of 2 Safdie-directed films coming this year from A24. While Josh's solo film stars Timothée Chalamet as a ping-pong hustler, Benny's solo project stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Mark Kerr, an MMA superstar who battled with addiction for years. While the trailers make this out to be a bit of a by-the-book sports biopic, early reports suggest that this one may be darker than it seems on the surface, and the TIFF description says that it feels rough and rugged and realist, almost like it's a documentary. It reminds me a lot of The Wrestler by Darren Aronofsky, actually. And regardless of how the film is, I feel very confident in saying that Dwayne Johnson is going to shatter everyone's expectations. Even from the trailers, I'm getting chills seeing what he's doing here, and this is someone who does not care much for The Rock, but I love when an actor wields their public persona as a weapon when they take on a new role and subvert the expectations that people have for them. So I believe that The Rock could be our massive shock performance of the year. Sacrifice. Roman Gavras directs this, and his last film, Athena, still blows my mind to this day. If you haven't seen Athena, there's a scene maybe like 10 minutes in where you realize they have not cut yet, and my jaw hit the floor. Every single shot, every single scene delivered a sense of holy hell, how did they do that? So Roman Gavras is a mind-blowing, high-wire filmmaker who seeks to achieve things on screen that no one else would ever even think of attempting. And that's what makes me so excited for Sacrifice, which is a star-studded film about a group of eco-terrorists that plan to kidnap 3 celebrities and sacrifice them in order to save the world. The cast includes Chris Evans, Anya Taylor-Joy, John Malkovich, Vincent Cassel, Charlie XCX, Young Lean. It sounds crazy, it sounds ambitious, it sounds fun, and because we're not getting Begonia at TIFF, this is going to have to do instead. The Testament of Anne Lee. The most exciting factor here is that after last year's The Brutalist, the wife-husband team of Mona Fastvold and Brady Corbet are back with another 70mm historical epic playing at Venice and TIFF. And just like The Brutalist last year, this one does not have distribution as of recording this. So Anne Lee stars Amanda Seyfried as the titular character who is proclaimed the female Jesus by her religious followers, a group called the Shakers. Fastfold is doing the story in the form of a musical with music by Daniel Bloomberg of The Brutalist. Probably my favorite film score of the last 5 years. Now, I love a musical. I love a movie musical. Do I think that Daniel Bloomberg is the right fit for a musical? I don't think so. I fear that this is maybe going to be a bit too harsh or experimental. It's going to be interesting to listen to, but is going to push more casual musical people away. So don't go into The Testament of Anne Lee expecting a musical like Wicked, or Mamma Mia for a reference of Amanda Seyfried. Expect something more like Annette, I would guess. But regardless, this one is very exciting, and it should be gorgeous on glorious 70mm film. If I had legs, I'd kick you. The trailer for this one was recently released, and it seems like it's one of the biggest festival players of the year, maybe the biggest festival player of the year, hitting Sundance, Berlin, Telluride, TIFF, and the New York Film Festival. Rose Byrne won the Best Lead Performance Prize in Berlin for what many people are saying is the performance of a career as a woman whose life falls apart as she balances her duties as a mom with a litany of other things that demand her attention. It's been described as very similar to Aronofsky's Mother, and watching the trailer, I got some of the same stress that I got out of watching Uncut Gems, which makes sense because the director, Mary Bronstein, her husband, Ronald Bronstein, is a prominent collaborator of the Safdie brothers as co-writer and co-editor of Heaven Knows What, Good Time, Uncut Gems, and Marty Supreme. So this one looks like it's gonna be the worst time in the absolute best way. Train Dreams. This was one of the big Sundance premieres of the year, and for a while was one of the only major sales from Sundance, as Netflix bought it immediately. This comes from Clint Bentley, who previously made Jockey, and was co-written by Greg Quaidar of Sing Sing. The trailer looks gorgeous. It's got echoes of Terrence Malick, Deborah Granick, Andrew Dominic to it, and it's based on a highly acclaimed book. I'm all in on Train Dreams. It looks fantastic. Scarlet. I'm a huge fan of Mamoru Hosoda's anime films, in particular Mirai and Summer Wars, I think are both masterpieces. With Scarlet, he seems to be leveling up his scope and his ambition in a massive sword-fighting epic that apparently takes some cues from Hamlet as a revenge story. While the trailer has a couple of rough-looking shots to it, this seems like something that could absolutely floor me, and it's got great festival presence, playing Venice, TIFF, and the New York Film Festival. I think that this could be something really, really special. Ballad of a Small Player. Edward Berger has been on fire lately, going from All Quiet on the Western Front to Conclave and now to this. It's amazing to see a filmmaker who was barely known just a few years ago going on such a hot streak. But this is his smallest sounding film of the three, telling a story about a gambler in Macau who runs away from his past and falls in love with a ghost inside of a casino. While I don't think this is going to be the same popular hit as his previous two films, I'm still expecting it to be an enjoyable, twisty film with great technical work and strong performances, especially from Colin Farrell, who's been doing tons of amazing work lately. The Christophers. I'm a simple man. I see the name Steven Soderbergh, I purchase a ticket to the movie. I don't need to see a premise. I'm there. This one stars Ian McKellen and Michaela Cole as a duo in a dark comedy about art forgery. And like I said before, Soderbergh, I'm sold, especially in 2025, which is a year where Soderbergh has already released two hits, with Presence and Black Bag both being fantastic movies. So bring on number 3, Steve. Hit me with it. Do your worst. Epic. Elvis Presley in concert. I'm not even that much of an Elvis Presley fan. I liked Baz Luhrmann's movie. I'm insanely curious what a Baz Luhrmann archival footage concert film looks like. This is one of the biggest curiosities of the festival because I think of Baz as a filmmaker who needs to control every aspect of production, and that's not possible when working with 50-year-old archive footage. So putting together a concert movie, archival, Baz Luhrmann, I need to see what this looks like. The Fence. Anytime there's a new Claire Denis movie, it's major news. I think it's always worth sitting down, watching a new Claire Denis movie, if for no other reason than to appreciate that one of our greatest filmmakers is still making movies as exciting and avant-garde and boundary-pushing as she was when she began in the 80s. Claire Denis makes challenging films, and her newest sounds like a callback to some of her early works like Chocolat, Beau Travail, or more recently White Material, in that it's a story about the devastating legacy of colonialism in Africa. Denis grew up in Africa, the child of a colonial family, and her experiences there have shaped her entire career and what she wants to say as an anti-colonial artist. In The Fence, a British-owned construction site is confronted by the death of an African worker, which leaves members of the community wanting answers. Coming from a master like Claire Denis, this sounds absolutely riveting. Monkey in a Cage. I mentioned in the Gala section of the video that Gangs of Wasseypur is one of my favorite Hindi movies, and here is the new film by the director of that epic. Anurag Kashyap's new film has very few plot details available, but it seems to be a prison movie, and even with very little known, I'm in. I just want to see what Kashyap can do in this environment. He is one of the most interesting filmmakers, if not the most interesting filmmaker, currently working in Hindi cinema. Silent Friend. Ildiko Enyedi is one of the greats of Hungarian cinema, responsible for one of my favorite films of all time, My 20th Century. In recent years, I haven't loved her work quite as much, with The Story of My Wife or the Berlin winner On Body and Soul. I do think that she operates best when she works at a more surreal level, and Silent Friend sounds like it's right in Enyedi's sweet spot. This movie tells 4 separate stories across time, all connected to an old tree in a garden. It sounds a little bit like how Sound of Falling was described, which was one of my favorite films at the Cannes Film Festival and is an unmissable film at TIFF. And a film about a tree using nature as a unique framing device sounds like something that could be really cool, or really misfire. One note of caution, though, this was reported to have been rejected by Cannes, so take that as you will. The Wizard of the Kremlin. This one just shot earlier this year. It stars Jude Law as Vladimir Putin, which could be an incredible piece of casting if he pulls it off properly. While the director, Olivier Assayas, his track record is pretty spotty, he has been responsible for some really interesting projects, like Carlos, Personal Shopper, and the HBO series, and the original film Irma Vep. The Wizard of the Kremlin could possibly end up being a different take on the politician biopic than what may be initially expected. No matter what, we know that the acting from Jude Law, Alicia Vikander is going to be phenomenal. The Lost Bus. Paul Greengrass hits more than he misses for me. And his newest film, about a bus driver who attempts to rescue a group of school children from the California campfire, looks like something that, even if it rings a bit emotionally saccharine, will be engaging and epic on a big screen. In the trailer, I was really impressed by the sound design, and I would love to see that on some of TIFF's screens, and more importantly, TIFF's speakers. Plus, I love Matthew McConaughey, and I feel like it'll be fun hanging out with him in a bus for a couple of hours. The Captive. In what looks like Spain's response to last year's The Count of Monte Cristo, this is an epic adventure film about the author Miguel de Cervantes, who wrote Don Quixote and his time as a captive in an Algerian prison. I love Don Quixote, I love the story. Alejandro Amenabar is a filmmaker who needs another hit desperately. He previously made The Others, starring Nicole Kidman. He won an Oscar for The Sea Inside, starring Javier Bardem. I can see The Captive being a really interesting film. Alternately, it could be a bit of an overblown attempt to make a story where there is none. Time will tell, but I'm hoping for the best from this one. Hedda. Nia DaCosta's adaptation of Henrik Ibsen's legendary play was one that very early this year was one of my most anticipated. And while my anticipation has kind of been stomped on by Amazon's clear lack of care for the film, I still believe that Tessa Thompson and Nina Haas are going to deliver amazing performances in this reimagining of the classic. And so for those who aren't familiar, Hedda Gabler is a play about a newly married woman who begins to go a bit stir-crazy in her husband's home. And she decides to make some mischief in her friends' lives, to take back some agency in her own life when an old flame of hers comes to visit. Like many of the films on this list, I feel like I'm most excited to see how the actors handle the material more than the movie itself. Couture. Alice Winocour has delivered some solid films with Proxima and Paris Memories, but this new film, which is described as a Magnolia-esque, sprawling drama epic set in the world of Paris fashion, sounds like it could be the one of her films to finally knock my socks off. It's being described as a film that weaves together various narrative threads of different women from around the world as they prepare for a fashion show in Paris. Also being noted on TIFF's website is an apparently great performance from Angelina Jolie. This one sounds like it could have something really special. Dead Man's Wire. Gus Van Sant is back, baby, and this one is a very fun-sounding true crime story based on a famous kidnapping, in which a disgruntled man who is behind on mortgage payments held a shotgun to the back of his mortgage broker's head and kept him hostage for 3 days, claiming that he had a wire attached to the shotgun that would automatically fire if he were ever to be shot by police. Bill Skarsgård plays the kidnapper. Al Pacino is also in the cast, which is very fun because there are some clear echoes of Dog Day Afternoon in here. This movie sounds like a good time. What can I say? I do think that the hostage movie and sort of the robbery movie has been mined bare by now, but still this sounds like a lot of fun coming from Gus Van Sant. And Sons. Sarah Polley wrote the screenplay for this one, which stars Bill Nighy as an author who calls his two oldest sons home to announce something in relation to their younger half-brother who was conceived in an affair. The premise of this one and the director aren't catching my eye, but it's a Bill Nighy performance of a Sarah Polley script, and that has me intrigued. There's been a lot of good that has come out of the 2022 Oscar season, but above all else, Bill Nighy and Sarah Polley linking up together to make some magic happen, definitely a highlight coming out of that Oscar season. Rose of Nevada. Although I didn't like Mark Jenkins' last movie, Ennis Men, I'm fascinated by this new film, which seems to be upping the budget with its premise and cast while keeping Jenkins' 16mm MOS production style, meaning that he films everything without sound and does it all in post. It's definitely an oddity to see a movie with actors like George McKay and Callum Turner, which is shot with the same method that's usually used for like zero-budget indie movies. The Rose of Nevada is a sci-fi movie about two men who sail a boat that has been rediscovered after going missing for 30 years, only to find themselves transported back in time to when the ship originally went missing. It sounds like a potentially exciting premise, and again, really cool production style to it. Dog 51. This is a French sci-fi movie starring Adele Exarchopoulos and Gilles Lelouch as a cop duo in a dystopian Paris, which is a police state monitored by artificial intelligence. While the premise here doesn't grab me all that much, the promise of major twists and turns that TIFF writes in their description does. It sounds like it could be a really fun time and a satisfying roller coaster of a sci-fi murder mystery. It might not be revolutionary, but it probably will be fun. Tuner. This is the first narrative film from Oscar-winning documentary filmmaker Daniel Roher. I'm biased because Roher is a Toronto guy and I loved his film Navalny, but I'm really excited to see his career continue to develop. I think he's got a really strong eye for how to tell a story on screen. Could be a nice surprise at the festival. Bad Apples, starring Saoirse Ronan. This is a dark comedy about a primary school teacher who decides to take drastic action against a violent pupil. Very little beyond that has been revealed, but it sounds like it could possibly go in a very Martin McDonagh direction, which would be really, really fun. I'm not sure exactly what to make of this yet, but I trust Saoirse Ronan's judgment on projects, and now, having thought about this, I desperately need Saoirse Ronan in a Martin McDonagh film. Super Irish. Kaye Malaga. For this one, I'm going off of my excitement for the filmmaking team of Mariam Touzani and Nabil Ayouch, who are Morocco's equivalent of Brady Corbet and Mona Fastfold. They're a filmmaking married couple who alternate directors between projects. Touzani's last film, The Blue Caftan, was shortlisted for the Oscar and showed a ton of promise as a filmmaker. This is her first film in Spanish, and it follows a woman who returns to Morocco to fight to keep her childhood home. Franz. Legendary Polish director Agnieszka Holland's latest film is a womb-to-tomb biopic of Franz Kafka, the legendary Czech author responsible for The Trial, Metamorphosis, and the term Kafkaesque. I don't normally love this form of filmmaking, the womb-to-tomb biopic, but I'm always willing to give Holland some grace, and I'd love to learn more about the life of Franz Kafka. And notably, this is a world premiere here at TIFF, even though most of Holland's movies end up at the Venice Film Festival, so that could potentially be a less promising sign for this movie. The Ugly. One potentially intriguing title here is the new film from the director of Train to Busan, which is not a horror movie, but instead an intimate drama about a family. The last thing I'd expect is the next film from the director of Train to Busan and Peninsula, but, you know, I'm here for it. I love when directors refuse to be pigeonholed into one genre. And those are all the films that I am personally interested in from the special presentations category. But let's move on to the first category in the video where I haven't seen any of the films yet. This is Platform, TIFF's juried category, which presents 10 premieres of auteur cinema in a competitive section. These are meant to be bold, daring, visionary works, which TIFF wants to give a platform that they might not find elsewhere. Normally, I find this category a bit hit or miss. Last year, I didn't give any of the films in the lineup above a 5 out of 10, but there can be some great films in here. This is where Sound of Metal played. This is where Moonlight, Jackie, and Rice Boy Sleeps played. This year, these are the platform films that catch my eye. Hen. E.O. was one of my favorite films of the past few years, which was a film following a donkey's point of view in the world. And Hen sounds like a feathered version of that film, where we follow a chicken who escapes her fate in the slaughterhouse. I have not seen any of this filmmaker's previous films, but from the looks of it, he makes really strange, interesting movies, and Hen could totally be a treat. To the Victory. This is the new film by Ukrainian filmmaker Valentin Vasyanovich, who also stars in the lead role. He previously made the film Atlantis, which I have not seen, but Arno, our channel's international film expert, has raved about that film for years now. This seems to be a film set in the future of Ukraine after the war has finished and after the liberation of the Ukrainian people. The logline is a bit vague here, but I'm interested to see what it could be about, and I'm always excited to see more fictional renderings of this conflict and its potential aftermath coming from Ukrainian artists. Bushra. This is a 3D animated piece of autofiction in which the filmmaker is represented by a coyote who is also a queer filmmaker as she goes home to Morocco to visit her mother. It seems like this is a movie that is an art house documentary starring someone's furry OC. It genuinely leaves me wondering like what the hell this movie is going to be like, but I'm incredibly curious. Nino. This film played the Critics' Week at Cannes in a rare selection of a film that is not a world premiere here in platform. I heard a lot of strong things about the film, not raves, but strong things about Nino, which seems to be centered around a great performance and tells the story of a man reckoning with his mortality around a birthday weekend. And lastly, Steve. Coming hot off of last year's Small Things Like These, Steve is a reteaming of director Tim Milan and Cillian Murphy. Netflix is releasing this one, which also shows a sign of confidence for it to show up at TIFF in this section, and the plot describes a day in the life of a headmaster at a reform school in Ireland as he deals with extremely challenging boys. Next up is my absolute favorite program at TIFF, Midnight Madness. This is Peter Kaplowski's mad genius at work as he tracks down the craziest, most gonzo genre films of every year. These are action, comedy, and horror movies with emphasis on raunchiness, gore, and terror. This year is weighted very heavily towards comedy, which is great for me, but some of the hardcore horror fans may be very disappointed with this lineup, honestly. But again, as someone who doesn't love horror and loves a good raunchy comedy, this Midnight Madness lineup looks spectacular. I have seen 2 of these 10 movies, and of those 2, I would say that Nirvana the Band, the show, the movie, playing on opening night is an absolute must-see, cannot-miss film, especially at the Toronto International Film Festival, because there will be nothing better than seeing this particular movie with a bunch of Toronto film people. Seeing as this movie is a Borat-style mockumentary in the streets prank movie, taking place on the streets of Toronto. And no, you don't need to watch the TV show to get what's going on about this movie, but I do recommend it. In particular, the web series from 2007, I highly recommend watching. You can find it all for free online. And the 2007 web series, only 2 hours long, directly ties into the plot of the film. But this belongs in the pantheon of great Toronto movies alongside Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And movie fans of all kinds are going to love all of its sly parodies and its winks at the audience, notably Back to the Future, and oddly enough, The Worst Person in the World. But on to the movies that I haven't seen and I'm excited to see. First off, Fuck My Son. Being described as similarly in bad taste to something like Pink Flamingos, this movie sounds like it's an absolutely revolting, hilarious comedy. I'm sure it's going to upset far more people than it delights. This is about an old woman who is determined to help her middle-aged, mutant, disfigured son lose his virginity. It sounds like it's going to have some fun, gross makeup effects, lots of nasty laughs, very like Trauma style of movie. sounds very up my alley in terms of like a bad taste horror comedy. Obsession. Notably, this is the new film from TikTok sketch comedian Curry Barker, who every once in a while pops up on my Instagram reels. He's a very funny guy. Shockingly, not a comedy in the slightest. It's being described as the most frightening film in this year's Midnight selection, in which a young man makes a wish that his crush falls in love with him, leading to a sinister enchantment. Peter Kaplowski likened this one to Possession, the Andrei Zulawski film, which really has me intrigued and excited by it. I also just love seeing sketch comedians jump to horror. We've seen it work with Jordan Peele. We've seen it work with Zach Kreger, especially Weapons just blew me the fuck away. I love sketch comedians turned horror filmmakers. So bring on the generation of TikTok comedians to take horror by storm. The Napa Boys. This one confuses and intrigues me. The TIFF description says that it follows in the tradition of American Pie, Lord of the Rings, and Wet Hot American Summer as a new installment in a beloved IP franchise. That confuses me because I can't find any mention of any previous Napa Boys movies, but I think it's a bit. I think that the bit here is that this is a raunchy parody of films like American Reunion, Super Troopers 2, or very recently Happy Gilmore 2, where the actors are now decades older, back doing the same shit, partying like they were in their 20s, banking on nostalgia. So if they pull this off, this could be a really fun spoof film of the nostalgic sequel comedy movie. And Kaplowski's description of the film says that he believes this is going to become your favorite comedian's new favorite comedy movie, and that is promising to hear. Dust Bunny. This is the feature debut of Brian Fuller, the showrunner of Hannibal. I'm always cautious about TV showrunners stepping into features. That's how we got Lucy in the Sky from the creator of Fargo, or Are You Here from the creator of Mad Men, both not good movies. And this sort of showrunner to movie curse is also why I left off a movie in special presentations titled Easy's Waltz, which is made by Nick Pizzolatto, who made True Detective. It's been proven time and time again that TV and film are very different mediums for a writer, and we've seen a lot of TV writers struggle in the transition over to their first feature films. With that said, the premise of Dust Bunny, which describes a child who hires a hitman to kill the monster under her bed, that is a fun enough premise for me to throw caution to the wind and say, fuck it, I'm in, I'll watch it. And it also reunites Mads Mikkelsen with his Hannibal showrunner, so that is exciting for anyone who's a fan of Hannibal. Junk World. It's rare to get animation in the Midnight category, but this is a stop-motion animated sci-fi action-adventure movie, which is the sequel and prequel to 2017's Junkhead, a film that's notable for being animated by a team of only 3 people. The only reason that I have Junk World lower down my list is that I have not seen Junkhead, so I can't really say I would be rushing to get a ticket because I haven't seen the first film and I need to do some homework. Otherwise, though, this looks amazing. The Furious. Coming from a great action choreographer, Kenji Tanigaki, who is responsible for the fights in last year's Twilight of the Warriors, Walled In. I'm sold on this one without caring about the plot. Some movies aren't about story. You know, you don't think about story when going into the Raid movies by Gareth Evans. I feel the same way about this. Just give me some great bone-breaking fight scenes. I want to hear the crunch. I think that's guaranteed coming from this director, who is a fight choreographer himself. And lastly for Midnight, Normal. The writer of John Wick and Nobody reunites with Bob Odenkirk for another action movie where a seemingly normal guy beats up and shoots a bunch of people. This time it's being directed by Ben Wheatley, known for Free Fire and High Rise and A Field in England, as well as many other films. Do I see why they made this movie the same year that they made Nobody 2? No, I don't. Do I really think that there's enough distinguishing this movie from the Nobody series? Not really. But are these movies about the plot? No, they are not. Bring on the carnage. Just make it exciting and I'll see it. I would love to see someone not Bob Odenkirk in this role, but I guess he's trying to be an action star right now, so whatever, Bob, do your thing, man. Now for the biggest category of the bunch, Centrepiece, which focuses on highlighting works of international cinema. There's very little distinguishing this category from special presentations, except again, premiere locations, and these are oftentimes a little bit smaller. These are likely to premiere either in TIFF's smaller theaters or at the Scotiabank Theater, so think slightly less glitzy premieres, but usually most of the best films of the festival end up in this lineup. In this category, so far I have seen a whopping 16 movies. Of those, my highest recommendation goes to Left-Handed Girl, which is a Taiwanese family dramedy shot on an iPhone, directed by Shi-Ching Su and co-written, edited, and produced by Sean Baker. It's kind of like The Florida Project meets Tangerine meets Yi Yi. I would also highly recommend checking out The Little Sister, which I expected nothing from, but it has ended up being a major film festival favorite of mine this year, with a fantastic central performance and a very nuanced take on queer coming of age. The President's Cake and My Father's Shadow both got mentioned for the Best First Feature Prize in Cannes, and both focus on growing up with a backdrop of turbulent political times in the countries. Lucky Lou is basically a modern-day update on bicycle thieves, but about the plight of undocumented workers and the gig economy in New York City. The Blue Trail is a weird, very cool sci-fi drama starring an elderly woman on a psychedelic voyage into the Amazon. And The Love That Remains is a surprisingly funny, surrealist story about a family falling apart. All of those films that I just mentioned have my strong thumbs up. Now for all of the other films. Blue Moon. Honestly, this should be in special presentations. Richard Linklater, Ethan Hawke, Margaret Qualley, Andrew Scott, a great storyline that's going to play well to older audiences and theater geeks, as it's a chamber piece set in Sardis on the opening night of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma, as Richard Rodgers' former creative partner, Lorenz Hart, laments his missing out on major success. The trailer looks like this is so made for me. Ethan Hawke looks fantastic. The makeup looks great. I love musical theater. I love Richard Linklater. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Orphan. The new project by Laszlo Nemes is one that I've been eagerly anticipating for some time now. Nemes is an amazing filmmaker hailing from Hungary, responsible for Son of Saul and Sunset. This is going to be his third film, and it's another historical drama, which will undoubtedly be gorgeous to look at and painful to watch. This tells the story of a child in the aftermath of the Hungarian uprising, who waits endlessly for a father who will never return. This was widely expected to be at Cannes, but was apparently rejected, which could be a bad omen for us here, but granted, there were many truly great films that have been rejected by Cannes and ended up being just fine. For example, Hard Truths last year. Son of Saul has given Laszlo Nemes enough goodwill in my books that I'm going to be lining up to see this regardless of what the Cannes Film Festival chose to do. Little Amelie, or The Character of Rain. With raves coming out of Cannes and an audience award coming from Annecy, Little Amelie is clearly one of the animated movies to watch this year. Most people are looking at the other Cannes animation, which I'll be talking about later, but this is the one my eyes are on. Little Amelie is about a French girl living in post-war Japan, and it's apparently a story about mortality through the eyes of a 3-year-old girl. I've heard that it's a small film, it's sweet and sad, but if I had to choose one of the animated films to see here at TIFF, it's this one, hands down. Eagles of the Republic. This and Young Mothers are the last 2 films that I need to see to complete all of the Cannes competition this year, so I'm higher on wanting to see this as a completionist dork. In reality, this probably should be a little lower down the list, but it's high up on my priority list. Eagles of the Republic is Tariq Saleh's new film, who previously did Boy from Heaven, aka Cairo Conspiracy. This new film follows in the same vein as that film. It's sort of a takedown of modern Egyptian political corruption, following an actor who's forced to do a propaganda film. I love the story of this one. I heard decent, but definitely not glowing things coming from Cannes. I wish that I saw it there, but I'm happy to see it here instead. A Useful Ghost. This is the funniest premise of the year. The story is about a ghost who haunts his widow's vacuum cleaner in order to stay useful and prove her family wrong about him after his death. It's a hilarious premise. It's got some strong reviews at Cannes. This is easily one of the ones to watch for here. Unidentified. Coming from Saudi Arabia, this is the new film from Haifa Al-Mansour, the first woman to direct a movie in the country, being Wajda in 2013. The plot of Unidentified is about a murder mystery in which the mystery is not so much about who the killer was, but instead is interested in uncovering more about the young woman who's found dead in the desert. It's said to look into uncovering the root of our collective fascination with stories about women being murdered, and it digs into why killers often get more fame than the victims. After a pretty extended hiatus from filmmaking, it's exciting to see Haifa Al-Mansour back making a really serious film. I would have loved to see this in the Venice competition, but I'm excited to see it here regardless. Blue Heron. This is the debut feature film from Canadian maverick Sophie Ramvari, who, despite this being her debut, has already had a collection of short films on the Criterion channel, has not been rushing to her feature debut, waiting to find a story that felt right to her. In Blue Heron, she talks about her childhood as the child of Hungarian immigrants in Vancouver Island, as her older brother struggles with increasingly concerning behavioral issues. Ramvari's work is interesting in how it straddles between documentary, fiction, and personal essays. Here, I'm going to be very interested and curious to see how she finds that balance. It's one of the most exciting debut films of the year for sure. Arco. I love animation, and this one looks promising to me as a sort of French tribute to Studio Ghibli, with a story that sounds reminiscent of Castle in the Sky, as a boy with the power to time travel falls from the sky and befriends a young girl. Arco won the top prize at Annecy and was bought by Neon at Cannes, and I, like a fool, skipped my screening of this because I was told by one person that it was bad. But from everything I've seen, it seems like that was the lone opinion of one person. Everyone else seems to be going crazy for Arco. Barrio Triste. After Aggro Drift and Baby Invasion, Harmony Korine's new production company dedicated to strange and absurd cinema, Edgelord, is back with this film. Their first not directed by Korine himself. This one is directed by Stills, a music video director from Colombia. It's a found footage film set in Medellin in the 90s about 4 teenagers who document their rowdy and sometimes violent actions. It sounds a little bit like Korine's Kids or Spring Breakers or even Trash Humpers. Also notably, this one comes with a score by revolutionary electronic musician Arca, so can't miss just for the music alone. The Last One for the Road. I heard mostly strong things about this one at Cannes. It's a road trip comedy through the Italian countryside as 2 guys attempt to relive their glory days by telling old stories on the way to pick up a friend from the airport. I love a good road movie. It sounds like this one hits all the right marks. Follies. This is the new film by Quebecois filmmaker Eric K. Boulian. I have not seen his other films, but I've been told he has a wonderfully funny sensibility. He's a filmmaking voice that I'm really excited to dive into, and this is one that's sure to bring the laughs, which is always great in the midst of a festival, because so many of these festival movies tend to be really dark, so it's great to see something like Follies that just makes you smile a little bit. Carolina Caroline. I have not seen either Dinner in America or Snack Shack, but I've heard amazing things about both of those movies, and both have sort of obtained a cult classic-like following online, specifically through TikTok. So this is the director of those 2 films, and it's his new film, seemingly about a woman who enters a Bonnie and Clyde-esque relationship in a bank robbery road movie. The premise doesn't have me sold, but the filmmaker, he's got a proven track record, and it should be fun. Dandelion's Odyssey. This strange, silent animated film about the aftermath of a nuclear apocalypse in which 4 dandelion fluffs float to a new planet, working together to survive on a new world, sounds weird. And I've heard a range of reactions to this one, with some people absolutely hating it, and others falling head over heels in love. I'm always willing to take a chance, though, on a weird animated movie. This sounds neat. Duce. I haven't been overly impressed by Pietro Marcello's previous films, Martin Eden or Scarlet, but this sounds like it could be full of enough great performances to alleviate all my other concerns about the filmmaking. Duce is a portrait of the end of a great Italian actress's life, sounding very similar to last year's Maria by Pablo Larraín. Similarly to Maria, this centers around a great actress playing the part of a legendary performer, as Franco-Italian Valeria Bruni-Tedeschi tackles the role and should be pretty spectacular in it. Hamlet. There's going to be a lot of confused and annoyed ticket buyers who try getting Hamnet tickets and end up seeing Hamlet instead. This one is primarily interesting to me because of the prospect of seeing Riz Ahmed tackle one of the Bard's greatest roles. Otherwise, do we need another Hamlet? I don't know, but I want to see Riz Ahmed do it, so I'm in. Memory of Princess Mumbi. This is a Kenyan sci-fi movie about the clash between technology and art, as a future war has made it so governments worldwide have banned all technology made past the year 2040. And a filmmaker goes to a small Kenyan village where he's challenged by a woman named Mumbi to make a film without the use of AI to help him. It could be overly heavy-handed for sure. I'm not immediately sold on the story, but I'm always intrigued by seeing sci-fi movies coming out of Africa, and I'm intrigued in seeing a perspective on the topic of AI coming from Africa as well. Girl. The directorial debut of Taiwanese art house darling Shu Qi is a surprise addition to this year's Venice competition. While the premise isn't really leading me to much anticipation for this one, seeing something this unexpected pop up in 2 major film festivals means that it's worth taking note of. I always say if there's a directorial debut in Venice competition or Cannes competition, that is exciting. There are so many other Centrepiece films that I just don't have room to talk about. They're not really interesting me all that much, but there are other Centrepiece films that are probably worth seeing that I'm just overlooking at this point. The next category is TIFF Docs, which is exactly what the title indicates. It's documentaries. This is a very interesting category because the other categories here also have documentaries. Also, this lineup is always quite devoid of early year documentaries because Toronto has another major film festival devoted entirely to docs. So many of the year's biggest documentary films have already played in the city before TIFF, which makes them ineligible to play here. Still, we usually get a few major documentaries coming out of this category, so let's dive into them. Cover Up. It used to be much more common that we'd have films playing at all 4 major fall festivals. This year, the only film that seems to be making every stop, correct me if I'm mistaken, is Laura Poitras's Cover Up. Notably, Laura Poitras's last film, her Golden Lion winning All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, did the same, hitting Venice, Telluride, TIFF, and NIFF. Laura Poitras's films often focus on stories about whistleblowers or people who stood up against institutional corruption, and this follows in that trend as it profiles Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter Seymour Hersh, who exposed massive US military corruption in the Vietnam War. I will always trust Laura Poitras to deliver something fascinating and eye-opening. Put Your Soul on Your Hand and Walk. Premiering at this year's Cannes Acid program, this documentary about a Palestinian photojournalist became tragically spotlighted at the Cannes Film Festival when the subject of the film was killed by an Israeli airstrike just 2 days after the film was announced. As this year has progressed and the genocide has continued, this film has grown increasingly relevant in its depiction of life in Gaza since October 7th. This seems to be one of the most essential historical documents of the year, the same way that No Other Land was for last year. The Tale of Cillian. Coming from the director of one of the most remarkable docs of recent memory, Honeyland, this new film is a similar story about farmers in North Macedonia, specifically focusing on one man and his friendship with a stork, which relates back to an old Macedonian folktale about a man whose son leaves home and transforms into a stork. Even take away this film's angle of magical realism, relating this to old folk tales, just a naturalistic documentary about a farmer and his bird friend made by the team of Honeyland, that's instantly a must-see documentary for me. Nuestra Tierra, Also titled Landmarks and formerly titled Chocobar, this is Lucretia Martel's long-awaited first documentary film, which people have been predicting at Cannes and Venice for like 3 years now. It's finally here, and it tells the story of the murder of an indigenous community leader in Argentina, and how this killing relates to centuries of colonialism and the erasure of indigenous peoples worldwide, and specifically in South America. Lucretia Martel is one of the most important filmmakers of our time, and anytime she releases something new, it's major. So this one could be really special, although expect something challenging and difficult to watch. The Eyes of Ghana. This is the new film from two-time Oscar winner Ben Proudfoot, who won for both The Queen of Basketball and The Last Repair Shop in the short documentary category. He's a master of docs that are both flashy and informative, hitting your emotions while maintaining a very studio-like sheen to them. In The Eyes of Ghana, he captures the passing of the torch as 92-year-old Ghanaian documentarian Chris Suihesi speaks with the up-and-coming filmmakers of Ghana about the importance of documenting a country's history. I'm not entirely sure if Ben Proudfoot's very polished style is the right way to tell a story about third cinema and about documentary filmmaking as a run-and-gun format, but I'm intrigued by the story and intrigued to see him take on a feature-length film for once. Below the Clouds. Gianfranco Rossi, while he's yet to deliver a film that I personally love, is certainly one of the most interesting documentary filmmakers working nowadays, with films like Notturno or his Berlin-winning Fire at Sea. Rossi's films capture carefully framed life, usually looking at the lives of immigrants and refugees in a very distinct cinematic form, letting the images just speak for themselves. This one takes place at the base of Mount Vesuvius, where Pompeii was once wiped out, and where the description of the film says that past and present collide. I don't know if I'm going to love this film, but I know that this is going to be entrancing and beautiful. While the Green Grass Grows, a diary in 7 parts. This is a 7-hour-long film diary. Yes, you heard me, 7-hour-long film diary. Is this one to catch during the festival? Probably not if you want to see anything else that day. Is it a film that I think is very much worth watching? Absolutely. This is directed by Peter Mettler, possibly the most important person in Canadian documentary filmmaking since the National Film Board revolutionized the art form. He is a cinematographer primarily, but his films as director are all about pushing to the extremes of where humans can go and what light can capture. This film is being described as a chronicle of the miracles of everyday things, which seeks to put the audience into a psychedelic trance. Sounds fascinating. Again, your mileage may vary. 7 hours. Is it going to be worth it for you? I don't know, but it sounds awesome. Orwell 2 + 2 = 5. I heard great things about this one premiering at Cannes. Raoul Peck's career has been incredible, and at 71, he's more prolific now than ever. Just last year, he also did Cannes and TIFF with his film Ernest Cole Lost and Found, and now he's already back with this one, which explores George Orwell's writing and crosscuts between his work and how it can help us to understand our modern political moment in a post-truth digital world. I'm definitely happy that the film seems to go more into the why this is relevant rather than just letting it be another biodoc about a writer, so it sounds very interesting to me. Modern Horror. This documentary is based on Andrea Warehun's autobiography, which tells her story as a sex worker in Toronto, first as a stripper, then an escort, and finally as an online model on OnlyFans. The film has been co-signed by Sean Baker, and it apparently works to challenge misconceptions about sex work in the digital era with a stylish visual approach to it. And after Anora last year, I'm absolutely up for more of an in-depth exploration of this topic and the nuances of how sex workers are portrayed in media in the modern era. A Simple Soldier. This is a Ukraine war documentary entirely captured in the first-person POV of a soldier on the front lines. It sounds like a different, more personal perspective. So many of the docs that we've seen about Ukraine have been from the perspective of journalists or other outsiders, but here is one coming from a man who is literally fighting for his life on the front lines. That more visceral perspective is undoubtedly going to be interesting to see. A Life Illuminated. This documentary is all about capturing bioluminescence in the deep ocean on camera. And regardless of anything else about it, I'm sure that this is going to be a visual spectacle, and I think it would be worth watching on a big screen for those images of the deep ocean lighting up with color. I don't know how I'm going to feel about the film outside of that, but seeing this on that Scotiabank IMAX screen, that would be worthwhile. And lastly, in the documentary category, Powwow People. This one is primarily notable to me because it was picked by Wavelengths curator Andrea Picard as one of the essential films of the festival outside of the Wavelengths category. The description here makes this sound like it's going to be a slow-moving film, but very artful depiction of a powwow, something that plays with the duration of editing to push the audience's attention span. And if that type of cinema is something that you enjoy, this one sounds like it could be very interesting. And speaking of wavelengths, next up is the Wavelengths category, which focuses on experimental and art house cinema. This program has been shrunk to a tiny selection this year, with only 8 feature films. I don't know what the hell that's all about, but it's incredibly disappointing because this program, I believe, is vital to the health of art cinema worldwide. Anyways, here's what I'm looking forward to from Wavelengths. Magellan. Lav Diaz is probably one of the most notable art filmmakers nowadays, famous for his durational epics. Magellan, which premiered to raves at Cannes, is a decolonial epic, looking at the story of the Portuguese explorer through a decolonial lens. And apparently every frame of this movie is stunning to look at, and though it takes its time, it's never dull. Also, notably, there is a 7-hour version of this film that may premiere next year, although I'm pretty unclear right now if that 7-hour version is a separate film or if it's also a film about Magellan. Regardless, I'm excited to see this film, and I'm happy that this one is not 7 hours. Black News, Terms and Conditions. Notably, this one premiered at Sundance after a very contentious dispute between the filmmakers and the producers, in which the film was momentarily pulled from the festival over unauthorized cuts made before the premiere. Ultimately, they were able to get the producers off the project to screen it at Sundance to rave reviews. Also, A24 was originally supposed to distribute the film, but exited the project after the director did not submit a cut on time, so this has been riddled with production troubles. Black News is directed by Khalil Joseph, a prominent music video director, and he's the man behind the visuals of Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Mad City and Beyoncé's Lemonade. But as a director, apparently his work is most inspired by the Thai director Apichatpong Weerasethakul. It's been described that this film is something like a visual album, talking about people of African descent worldwide. And it sounds like, despite being a Wavelengths movie, this one's probably going to be the most accessible film in this selection, with some music video influences going alongside it. With Hassan in Gaza. I've been hearing raves about this one, which is playing in Locarno right now. This is a documentary that edits together mini DV clips from 2001, as the filmmaker Kamal Al-Jafari went looking for an old friend of his in Gaza. The film is an archival doc and a personal doc at the same time. The footage is apparently primarily focused on the everyday moments in Gaza in 2001, the way that we film home movies typically, composed of these images that seem random or less story-driven because they weren't filmed with a story in mind. They were filmed just to capture a day spent with an old friend. Dry Leaf. Premiering at this year's Locarno, this is the new film by Georgian filmmaker Alexander Kobaridze, who directed the excellent film What Do We See When We Look at the Sky? It's being described as one of this year's most radical experiments in cinematic form, which is always exciting to hear, and although plot details are sparse, I don't really need plot to be excited about a filmmaker like this or a film like this. I'm in just based on the merit of the person behind it and the reviews coming out of Locarno. And lastly, for Wavelengths, Mare's Nest. I have yet to see any of Ben Rivers' films, so this is going to be my introduction. It sounds like a very interesting story that I don't immediately think of an experimental film when reading the logline. It's about a young girl and her adventures in a world without adults. It feels like this could be a fantasy adventure, but instead, this is an experimental film. I've been warned by some friends who have seen it that it's very, very slow at times, but I'm ready. Bring it on. Now into the Discovery lineup, which is designed to spotlight first and second feature films. This lineup I'm going to go a bit lighter on because unless something really grabs me with the plot description, I usually tend to avoid the Discovery films. Sometimes you get a Discovery movie that just blows me away, like I Like Movies by Chandler Levac. But for every one of those, there's 20 films that you never hear from ever again. Still, you can find some great surprises in here, but usually more than anything, the Discovery category at TIFF foretells filmmakers to watch for more than films to watch. But these are the films that I'm looking out for. Egghead Republic. If you see one Discovery movie, this should be the one. This is a Swedish film about a world in which the Cold War never ended, and Kazakhstan was erased from the map by a nuclear bomb. What really has me stoked about this is Peter Kaplowski, the Midnight Madness programmer, co-signed this one, saying that it could be considered the 11th Midnight Madness movie, as it apparently goes absolutely balls to the wall with its sci-fi thrills. Sounds magnificent and brings the ambition that I wish that more debut films would give us. Maddie's Secret. This is a comedy from comedian John Early. I'm not familiar with Early's work. I can't speak too much on that or on him as a writer, but I love the sound of a satire based around content culture and social media, especially one that stars Vanessa Bayer and Connor O'Malley. I'm in on this film primarily based on those reliable comedians. Stand-up comics usually make really interesting movies, like Bo Burnham's 8th Grade or Mike Birbiglia's Sleepwalk with Me, so I'm interested in seeing Maddie's Secret for sure. Marama. While I normally stay away from movies like this one, which is an elevated horror about a woman plagued by visions while inside of a seemingly haunted British manor, this film's colonial take on the subject matter might make it really interesting. I just want to see it actually go into the horror side of the things, rather than just showing us a character who's scared, as so many elevated horror movies do. Little Lorraine. With an all-star cast, this one immediately stands out in the lineup. It's about a small Canadian maritime community that gets overtaken by a Colombian drug smuggling ring. I don't always love that small-town drug-running type of movie. I think it's a pretty played-out type of film, but I'm willing to give this some attention because the pedigree behind it seems pretty impressive. It's directed by Andy Hines, one of the biggest music video directors out there right now, frequently works with J Balvin, Logic, Alicia Keys, Lizzo, and many other artists. He seems like a voice to watch and someone who could make a really fun crime movie. And lastly, Ghost School. This is a Pakistani film about a 10-year-old who fights against her superstitious community to discover why her school suddenly closed down. My biggest hope with this one is that it actually leans into the genre of the premise. I fear that this may not end up going all the way into how cool it sounds like it could be, but I hope that I'm wrong about that. The description sounds really fun. Same way I mentioned with the other elevated horror film here, just make it horror, lean into the genre, please, for the love of God. And that's it for Discovery. The other films, they're not sticking out to me. I would recommend skipping them, otherwise you are taking a risk. Unless you know something I don't know about those films. Then after that, there's the Primetime lineup, which showcases new TV shows. I'm not going to talk about any of these because, to be honest, I really don't care much about TV, and none of the shows playing here this year are catching my eye. I just don't care about Primetime. I don't care. And the last program of the festival is the Shortcuts category, and there are far too many short films to talk about, but I'm just going to highlight a few programs that have exciting films in them. Shortcuts 2 features a film from Cannes called Talk Me, which is executive produced by Spike Lee, and takes place in a world where speaking is considered the most intimate thing that anyone can do, and sex is as casual as conversation is to us. I've seen some clips from the film. It looks really, really weird and funny. And there's also Bots by Rich Williamson, who directed the People's Choice Award runner-up film Scarborough just a few years ago. Shortcuts 4 features a new film by Idris Elba titled Dust to Dreams, as well as a film made by some of my friends that I went to film school with in Toronto, which is titled Year of the Dragon, directed by Duran Findlay Liu and produced by Lena Lee. It's both of their first selections at TIFF. I could not be happier for the two of them. This film is about a Chinese mother who makes the rounds to various family members on her son's birthday, and it's apparently about the weight that mothers carry for their children, and a love letter to mothers. Duran is a great filmmaker. Having seen many of his films before, I'm so happy to see him get his first selection at TIFF. And Shortcuts 5 features I'm Glad You're Dead Now, which was this year's Palme d'Or winner at Cannes for the short film category. And that was such a cursory look into all of the shorts. I glanced over that, basically, but I could take another full hour just diving into all of the shorts. And to be honest, I don't want to do that, but I appreciate the time that you guys have spent with me today. If you're going to TIFF, let me know what you're most looking forward to in the comments down below, and let me know if there's anything that you're excited for that I missed out on. As always, thank you so much for watching. My name's Matt, and this has been Fantasy Film Ball.